Good morning. Thank you everyone for being here on a Sunday morning, a rainy day. Very brave. Thank you very much. And also I'd like to say hello to those who are following us on streaming, video streaming. So also I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers. I come from here, from Leon, so I very much like to be at home. And today we will be talking about research and relief. So I will be sharing with you results that have not been published and will be published here for the first time, and I hope that you like them interesting as well as helpful. And if some of the things that we will be discussing today are of use to you, either on the short term or on the long term, I will be very happy for that. Well, I've been already introduced. I am the security consultant, principal security consultant. I do reverse engineering, embedded industrial control system. I just crash everything that comes to the lab, and this is what I do. The agenda is the following. You start my presentation with an introduction, then why to doing research, and then real cases, and last I will finish with a few conclusions. If you have any questions, and then I will be happy to take them in the question and answer session. Research. It is basic for humanity. Human beings are curious by nature. Well, perhaps we are less and less curious, but anyway, we should try to keep up that curiosity. At the end of the day, research is about looking for new knowledge, and that knowledge is what drives society forward. Knowledge help our life condition, our lifestyle, and protect the planet where we live, which is not a minor thing. So research is basic, and we should never ever underestimate or go against research. There are 4 fields where research becomes especially important, and it is very important to have research at the level of the person, of the individual. A person feels fulfilled when he understands how the environment around him works, how he interacts with things that are close to him, as well things that are far away from him. So when something is far away from you, and when you study that, and when you research into that, you understand the world better, and that makes you feel also better, more at ease. With the economic crisis, we have started to understand how many things worked, and if we had done that research before, perhaps we wouldn't have gone into so much trouble. We could have fixed some problems before the crisis came out. So it is just essential to do that at the personal level, but also at the business level. So you cannot do, as Einstein said, or it is said that he didn't say it, but anyway, he said, well, you cannot do the same thing all over again. So it's a question of risking it, and when you do the same thing always, you will never make any progress. So business research is extremely important. I will tell you more about what we do in the company where I work. So what is the impact of research on security? And I will tell you also about the things that are not in your favor when you do research. Social research is also very, very important. We talked about improving life conditions, improving humanity. All of you are aware of the concept return on investments. However, perhaps not all of you are aware on the social return of research. There are applied methodologies for that out there, and it is way of measuring, quantifying how a research, a project, a company has had a social impact in the magnitude that is not always related to money or to markets. So therefore, I also would like to see research as a social research that help improve our lives. And global research and what you do at home will have a higher or greater impact at a global level. So all these dimensions, all these fields, they feedback each other and make up research as the field of research as a whole. So now let me tell you about a research that I carried out 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, and it was a research about security or the lack of security in satellite communication. I found a number of vulnerabilities in the systems that are used to access systems used by satellites. We could run a parallel to routers. So instead of having an Earth connection, here we are talking about satellite connection. So these systems are used in very many scenarios where accessing Earth connection is difficult. Here I'm referring to vessels, aircraft, remote connection. Of course, the military uses it. So we are talking about questions that are satellite communications are critical. Also, vulnerabilities were found in these systems providing connectivity to aircraft. It had a great impact. It was widely discussed, and I said, well, all aircraft will crash. So I said that, and then all that started to be said, which was far from reality. And then what conclusions can we draw from that research? Well, some bad conclusions, for instance, poor or bad interpretations. For instance, as I said before, you go and say there is a vulnerability in a in-flight system, and then you try to explain that, and then that becomes blah blah blah, and then makes a headline that says, okay, well, aircraft will crash. And I said, well, I didn't say it, of course, but we should not forget what happens with media. So what I mean is that you should try to make a good explanation of what you say, so that headlines are no longer there. In terms of rumors, later on, after publication of that research, when these results were published somewhere else, they said that someone had hired IOActive to carry out this research, and it was intended to be a commercial attack to the manufacturers of SATCOM. I'm not going to mention out any names, but that was absolutely senseless, because all the companies manufacturing SATCOM services were impacted by it. And actually, I explained the methodology, what I did in the research, how I discovered all the firmware. It was available in a website. I also explained how I carried out the analysis, all the technical tests that I did. And this is what I'm trying to say here. Even if you do everything right in the right manner in this sector, and probably same as in very many other sectors, well, a number of false theories come out. And then conspiration. Some people were obsessed with the Malaysian airline and the aircraft that disappeared, leaving no trace, vanished. And then I used to get emails and I say, I'm surely you know something because you've been researching that. I have this theory. And I say, leave me alone. I know nothing about the aircraft of Malaysian Airlines. So, well, there are all sorts out there. And then also enemies. As I said before, when you publish the research, well, we didn't publish the research or made that research against anything or anyone. We just analyzed an environment, a device, and we just published the results. And of course, you cannot keep everyone happy. It is understandable. Companies, fortunately, not all companies, when we publish research, most of the companies want to cooperate with us. They want to have a better understanding of the problems that we have found. They also want to learn and understand what they can do to help us resolve it. But unfortunately, this is not always the case, and some companies take it as either business or individual attack. And at the end of the day, well, we are talking about companies that may have decision-making power in some fields. However, there is also a good side to all that. Starting off with learning, I knew nothing about the topic. That research made me study a lot on that field, and I learned a lot, things that I used later on. So this is what you take with you, what you keep with you. You will never finish the research knowing less than you knew when you started. Also, awareness raising and increased awareness raising after research or publishing that research. Some people may become more aware of what is happening there. Therefore, as I say, that increased awareness also lead to scenarios or to taking security more into consideration. Some companies may start to set up the security teams as a result of these research results. Also, another advantage when you publish research of this kind, a world of possibilities opens up to you from the business world because you gain access to more resources, to more projects. People at conferences ask us, why do we do research? Are you paid to do that? Are you hired by companies to do your research? No, that's not the way. It is IOActive. It's a company whose mission is research, and we do research for two reasons. First of all, because it fosters learning, it also helps researchers being fulfilled, and also it opens up, gives you access to continue to do more research. With this, I mean that we do gain access to clients that otherwise it would be very difficult to get access to. We have produced state-of-the-art research on pacemakers, ATMs, SATCOMs. We are researching other topics also relating to industrial control, so it is very important to open up new options and to create new research scenarios. And now talking about methodology. So we are not going to reinvent the wheel here. And as I said before, in terms of learning, I learned a lot. It has been very important for me, very fruitful for me to carry out research that was far away from what I knew. Therefore, I was not in my comfort zone. I didn't feel happy in approaching all that. Of course, I had a set of knowledge. However, there was a long way ahead of me, a long way of knowledge and learning. I had to study a lot. In the first phases of the research, I said to myself, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm studying a lot. I am getting nowhere. But curiously enough, and this is always the case, after a few weeks of studying deeply, then there is kind of a click in your brain, and everything starts to be more consistent, and then in the end you realize that things fall into place, that you are making progress, and that what you are doing is actually meaningful. And then with regard to methodology, well, we just implemented a scientific method. There is no other way but to implement a scientific method, and more especially so in cybersecurity. You cannot go and say, well, this may be SQL injection or not. It is or it is not. So this is the methodology we apply to cybersecurity, and this is just the scientific method. First of all, you approach a problem, you find a problem. You may find a problem, or you may have the intuition, you may feel that there is a problem there or somewhere, or you may find a problem. For instance, one day you are browsing and then your browser crashes, and then you look into why it may have crashed, and you may have found that you visited a website and the website created that failure, or perhaps you had a Trojan installed and then that Trojan didn't work well, or was not compatible with any of the features or functionalities that you visited. You take it from there, and then you could be facing different options. So that is first and second stage, that is to say hypothesis creation, and then you have to go into the actual research to look into why that happens. Then you just have your debugger, you start to look into why it is crashing, why it's not working well. You carry out forensics analysis, which I just implement all the techniques that we all use, that we all know in security. Then when you find something, you should wonder whether it is feasible. Well, perhaps it was just a breach, it was just something that it's not pointing at an actual problem, a severe problem. If it happens not to be a problem, unfortunately, you cannot have any tangible results, any meaningful results to publish. But surely, in the way you would learn, and then you take that away with you. You never waste your time, and then if you have discovered something, you will publish it either in your blog or at the conference, and that will open up many doors to you when it comes to finding a new job, or just do it for yourself, for your individual satisfaction. And then to set out the basis for research, the only thing you can do, I always advocate for reading everything you will find about your objective, whether it is published in books and papers, videos, programs. If you are doing research on aircraft, you watch documentaries, videos, you name it. We live in the time of information, era of information. Let us use information for whatever is for. So those of us being in or studying cybersecurity or IT security, we know that we do research in a controlled environment, that is to say either at home, or you can set up your own lab. Imagine that you have a friend who is a doctor and he says, I'm doing research at home, and say, oh my God. There's a difference. Us doing cybersecurity, we have that advantage. We should tap into it. We just need hardware, software, and an objective. And that is easy to get nowadays. And now, let's talk about a specific objective, which is in-flight entertainment system. I'm sure you've seen similar pictures to those on the screen. These are the typical displays that you get on board. You can read documents, you can listen, watch movies or listen to music. And now that it's time to panic. But not just because aircraft will crash. Well, I've been in the past, I had fear of flying in the past. And one of the things that helped me overcome that fear of flying was to understand why things happen, knowing why noise takes place. If, for instance, knowing or understanding that no matter how much the aircraft moves, that doesn't mean that you will necessarily die. That is to say, to give a context, to understand the context of everything that is happening on board. So my talk is about also that. The idea is to understand how in-flight entertainment system works and not to make any statements out of context, and of course not to create any panic for no reason. So just to give you some context. On aircraft, well, we have 4 different domains depending on the data that are used. So let us say there is a critical domain, which is the avionics domain, which is the aircraft control domain. That's where we have all the electronic systems controlling the aircraft. If something fails in this domain, the aircraft is very likely to face a complicated situation. That doesn't mean that it will crash, it will fall off, but the chance is there. And in avionics, there are 5 levels to certify a software that will be run on an aircraft. There are different levels of criticality. So level A, highest level, it means that if one of those components fails, the aircraft is very likely to lose control, to drop off. Then we have level B. Level B tells us that even if one of the components in that domain, well, that may cause some level of discomfort on passengers, but that would be it. That would be the consequence of it. And often in-flight entertainment systems belong to that domain. That is to say, domain number domain B. For instance, if one of them fails, you may not be able to watch a film, and that would be it. That would be the consequence of it. However, there is a problem to that, and this is one of the things that I mentioned or that I talked about when I presented my research on SATCOM. For instance, to gain access to the internet from in-flight entertainment systems, often we use SATCOM systems. So if you pivot between different systems that are connected between them, so probably from a domain which was not critical in the beginning, you may end up in a domain which is more critical. And this is a problem with satellite devices, because satellite devices are giving functions to critical domains and to domains which are not that critical. For instance, SATCOM systems provide communication to avionics systems to control engines or to send out messages between the captain and the earth personnel or airport personnel, and these are critical communications. Also, satellite communication system may allow the communication to gain access to the internet or to send out an email, you name it. What happens that the same device was offering both functionalities. With this I mean that if someone manages to compromise that device, it would potentially compromise the communication of the highest or the most critical domain on the aircraft. But let us leave that aside, and now let us focus on the basic architecture of in-flight entertainment systems. This is not very complicated. Well, in the first place, we have the seat displayed unit. As we saw before, this is the display that is we have on back of the seat, and we also have the personal control units. That's where you can control lights or system control units that control everything that is happening on board, for instance, the lights of the system, and this is managed by onboard personnel. Then we also have the personal control unit, the PCU, which is a server that also requires certification, and it should meet a number of requirements. But at the end of the day, it is a server which is connected to the avionic bus, probably to IN429, and this server is a proxy in between the in-flight entertainment system and the avionics. Because if the server receives data about the speed and the height and the location, the server sends that information out to the in-flight entertainment system. And you, as a passenger, for instance, they tell you where the location of the plane, etc. And then we also have the personal control unit, which is kind of like a handset, like a telephone. Some cases we can swipe our credit card to access pay content, and also it also has all the, well, it has several functionalities, for instance, controlling the height of your seat, etc. And this is known as a LRU. It can be easily unmounted and mounted back again. So everything started on a flight from Warsaw, Dubai. I was a bit bored, and I said to myself, okay, let us see if I can control something. And then I touched on the left top corner on the display, and when you touched it 3 or 4 times, you got a debugging information, and it was basically the IP, the name of couple of firmware files, and that was it. That's about it. And I said, this is interesting. I kept it, and when I landed on Dubai, I looked it up on Google, and I wanted to see what I could get from there. Then I found all the firmware available from very many airline companies. This was a website that was not protected whatsoever. We just have this long directory, and they were using this website, and actually they continue to use it. However, now you cannot browse these directories, and they were just hosting all the upgradings there. I downloaded some of them, not all of them, because there were too many, and I started to analyze it. And all this is manufactured by Panasonic Avionics, which is probably the most widely used in-flight entertainment system. It is used by United Airlines, Delta, American Airlines, KLM, Lufthansa, Aerolíneas Argentinas, Iberia. Iberia used to use it. I don't know whether they continue to use it now or not. Most of the main airlines use this product. And based on my firmware analysis, we can conclude the following. We have the server that I mentioned before that requires certification, avionics certification. I tried out a number of functions there. And then we also have the seat app, which is the device that you have on the passenger seat. And then we have the crew app, which is the device managed by the crew. With seat app allows you to interact through a USB or through a handset, the handset that we mentioned before. That handset is used, well, amongst others, to swipe your credit cards and then to gain access to some services. Then communication between the server and the other various units is done through the internet, through the Ethernet, and then the server, as I say, it has access to the avionics bus. From there, I started to analyze the files that I found. Well, there are several versions of the in-flight entertainment system by Panasonic. The oldest ones, well, were based on Linux, then they switched to Android, and they use a number of scripts. Scripts that allow interaction with the main binary. They have a binary implementing a number of functions, binary that receives packages about the location of the aircraft to control the card reader, and these functionalities are widespread through that script language. So decided to reverse it to see how it works. It is made up of hundreds of commands. Some cases, some of these commands are implemented, others aren't, and those commands allow you to do very many things. For instance, modifying whatever says on the screen, launch an app. So every possible, well, all the functionalities of the device can be accessed through that script. If we analyze how define works, the first instruction on the screen, then we look for code and we see where this is managed. They do parsing line by line. They parse the script, and when they detect a structure that they recognize, the structure is parsed and then information is extracted. In case of define, when they detect it, they jump to another routine to check the parameters following define. There are several defines. For instance, here in box 2 we can see an item which is now draw, timer or value, same as we saw in the previous screen, the screen on top line. So if that is a value, that value is parsed to see whether it is a constant or a number, because several constants are supported as well. If it is a constant, they extend it, and if it is a concrete specific value, they keep the name of the value that is being defined as well as the actual value, and then they keep it there to use it later on when during the running of the script. And then this is a command table, some examples there. And this is the way I analyze the system.
Funcionalidades curiosas, pues lo que os comentaba de las tarjetas de crédito. Para acceder a determinadas funcionalidades, como por ejemplo para enviar un mail o para enviar un SMS.
That is emailing or texting. For all of that, you need to pay. And the credit card needs to be swiped through the handset, and that is sent and read by the system. That would be a device that is specifically developed for that. And as you can see, they are parsing the credit card tracks. Eventually, if we could maybe endanger or compromise the system, we residually could get some credit cards information, but that would not be the main target. If you used it to read PDF documents, you might think that it's similar to XPDF. Yes, that's right. This is the script that starts XPDF. It's started by XPDF to read PDF documents from the USB unit. As I was saying before, the system is Linux based, and it just uses Linux tools and some other open source tools based on that license, but well, they shouldn't use them anyway. The latest version includes Android, so the flow changes a bit, and that's where they changed from one script, this one, to QML. So it's a bit more clear. It is scalable, it can be scaled up, and then it can be replicated better than with the previous scripts. And this is what's been used. And we still have access to the code for the new version. And there it is. Then the back end. As I was saying before, this system has a client-server architecture. On the server we have the backend running. Initially the backend was not all of it was available on the website, but then by looking for some words that came up in the code, I found a different company. This one did have the backend exposed. It was the backend for some airlines. But in the end, the base code would be just the same. And I think there's a problem there. Once again, it's not normally makes no sense that those companies that are .era, that are all related to the aircraft sector, it makes no sense that information is being revealed, sensitive information has been revealed when they are sensitive or specific clients or customers. As I was in Dubai, I checked the code, I looked into it all, and when I was back in Madrid, I said, well, let's try this. Do you find anything fishy here in this query? Anything weird in this query? Or maybe there's something you think could be different? Yes, it's an Sql injection. And this is not the only one. So let's see some videos I updated with some vulnerabilities, proving some vulnerabilities that are not much, nothing much, but still they prove the problems that are there. It was not about to make a mess out of it, of course. So let's have a look. First of all, so first one, this is what I said before. For some specific actions, we do need to pay. That's where you need to swipe your card. There's something that does not happen there. And that is that there is no real-time validation of the credit card once you swipe it. And so usually it is satellite communication on the airplane or maybe specific mobile links, but it's still way too expensive. So they somehow take up or endure the eventual fraud. From the point of view of an attacker, makes no sense to scam from the airplane because it's tightly controlled and they will know who it was quite fast. But that's it. There's no real-time validation of credit cards. So, even based on the validation algorithms that I've found, well, you could bypass validations though. Some others do have real-time validation, but I don't think this, well, I think this will get better. So first of all, when you create an email, so instead of an I embedded an HTML tag, and source was, sorry about this, source was, videos up. So back again to the beginning. So this first clip is the way to bypass credit card validation. No need for a credit card here. So they use or simulate rather a key code when you swipe the card. That way they know they've done it, you've done it. We can simulate it as well. We press Ctrl S. And that's it. We've bypassed credit card validation. And we can write an email, send a text or an SMS. So if we are going to write an email, I embedded an HTML tag, added a path that is usually known to see if you're reading a file or not. Because then you are dead random and it will not come back. It will be stuck in there. So this way, you see it's stuck. The handset, or rather the panel is stuck because it's reading the random code. And so it's frozen. And you cannot watch the clip anymore. So you need to do this at the end of your trip, right? Otherwise you are stuck without any kind of videos or films. And as I said before, we are now going to try an Sql injection. This is search for films or movies. And there you see, they are all the top down. And this is just a regular Sql injection, nothing fancy about it. But we are high in the sky, that's all. So from top down to bottom up, so that you see it changes. It's all highly sophisticated, right? It's one hand. And as you can see, well, not my thumb, but you see movies are organized bottom up now. And from there onwards, we could simulate other attacks. And through code analysis and settings of files, you see all the paths, all the passwords that are being used to have access to the database. So, all in all, you could have done or tried things such as driving the airplane. So, this was found in 2015. We warned Panasonic. Their reaction, well, I keep it a secret. Not too bad initially, but I don't know what happened then. There was something going on there. So, a year later, they have a bug bounty. I don't know, sorry, a bug bounty. I don't know if it made a difference or not, but I hope it's encouraged an increase in awareness about security. It is true that the latest systems that are Android based have their own app store, and so they have an API so that developers can develop their own apps, and then those will be included into the store. So it is true. It's always advisable to check it all up. So if you wanna look into Panasonic avionics systems, it's nice to know that if you find something, you will be paid for it. And that's been all. Thank you for your attendance. I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are questions and I can answer, I'll be happy to do it. That's what I'm here for. So thank you all. See you next time.
Ahí hay una pregunta.
There's a question there. Cannot hear you from here, so admin password and all the way to the database. Was that it? You say that cards, tracks were stored on the device itself, right? So maybe you have gotten all the tracks and have used them to clone cards then? Well, it's too much saying. From what I've seen, yes, if you have an SQL injection and seeing that there is no signature verification, there is no verification actually, if you manage to write or else to get the output that you can control from an SQL injection into a file up to the server, then you can compromise the server. From there, potentially, you could also compromise clients. But yes, of course, technically speaking, we cannot rule it out, but it's what I said before. I would rather keep my distance and not to go into that. But potentially, if you manage to overwrite the main binary, the one controlling data, getting data from the card reader, yes, for sure, you could get those tracks and use it to clone cards. But still, this is an attack that technically it is doable, but I don't know to what extent it's worth it. Since it is an airplane, I don't know the statistics, how many people use the credit card on a plane, but I guess it makes more sense to go to an ATM and do the same. But do not steal, please. First of all, I'm here. First of all, congrats on your presentation, very interesting. And so, my question is, based on your research, as you said before, satellite connection aims at a main server that controls avionics and the IE system. Isn't it too critical so that both are connected, don't you think? The satellite device on board provides different communications pathways, some for security that are always priority over all the others. So if there is some jam, some event where there can only be one channel, it will be the safety related communication that takes priority. Whether it's safety or security, both these types take priority. So if you manage to fully disable this communication device, from there, it will not be possible to have either one type of communication. This is a well-known problem. I didn't mention it here, but when I discuss satellites in my presentation, you Google it and you will find that there are some statements from airplane companies or airlines saying, if you ask us to isolate on the physical plane those satellite communication devices, that means that users will not have access to the internet. This is complicated. So technically, might not be the best idea to have just one single communication device providing services to a non-critical domain and then at the same time a critical service. But the idea is to understand things and mitigate scenarios insofar as possible. But it is a good question because it is a well-known problem so far. Thank you very much. It seemed that it was x86 32 bits. Well, it's funny, not there, because there are some versions, demos, for computer, and other for seats. Actually, the code detects whether it's running on a development rack or seats. So, often that's not necessary, because based on the documentation they had, it seemed they sent airlines just demo versions that are ready to run on PC, so that they check everything is right. So those are the ones that I managed to download and check. But I actually did not need to emulate because the code was quite straightforward. But they do have versions that are busy, and the code understands when it is being run in a different setting. If there are no further questions, thank you very much. See you next time.